We've got a ton of Anthem news to go over. We've got an official response from Bioware about the question, will Anthem be seeing a downgrade? Plus, a pretty funny response from them about the whole Spider-Man PS4 game, which was rumored to get a downgrade, and the whole Puddlegate controversy. I'll highlight that. Plus, we're going to be talking about some new clarifications from Bioware about Mass Effect and Dragon Age taking influence from Anthem. What exactly was meant by this? The whole community kind of flipped out when they heard this, and they were like, no, don't do it. You know, so they basically clarify what they mean by that. Plus, we're going to go over some new details about the animal life for Tarsis, passive skills, and so much more. So guys, welcome back to Open World Games. Shall we dive in? Let's do this. Let's rock and roll. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about the downgrades. So yeah, first of all, let's see Bioware poking some fun at the whole Spider-Man Puddlegate controversy. Here it is at PAX West, their PAX West panel. Take a look.
So in this screenshot, there's a lot to unpack here, but most importantly, you'll see that there's a puddle right in the ground, right in the middle of that. So before we move on, there's a 98% chance that that puddle is going to be changed, moved, reduced.
Don't touch my puddle.
So yeah, that's pretty funny, but what is the official response about this? So a little while ago, it was asked by Darth Art 007, is the gameplay we've seen so far still representative of the game? And Bioware's Brennan Holmes says, yep, I'm sure you'll see confirmation of this soon, end quote. And I can, for myself, say that I did play the game on Ultra settings on PC at E3, and it was actually working and running, and it was an amazing experience. Now, will the PS4 and Xbox One look as good as what was showcased on Ultra PC? Probably not, but you got to look at Battlefield 5, the Battlefield 5 beta. So what we can determine from that is the Xbox One. I played that version of that game on the Frostbite engine, and it looks beautiful. So I have no doubt this game is going to look beautiful on PS4 and Xbox One. And yeah, it is absolutely gorgeous what they are pulling off with this Frostbite engine. So let's talk about some of those clarifications about Anthem. Mass Effect and Dragon Age, taking inspiration from Anthem. That's what I wanted to say. And let's go into that. So recently it was revealed that Bioware would be taking inspiration, of course, from Anthem to further, progress their development of their other game franchises. So Casey Hudson of Bioware said, some weird stuff going around about how our future games will be influenced by Anthem. Of course, we do a Dragon Age game, it will be designed from the ground up based on what Dragon Age should be. Same with Mass Effect. He continues onward saying, Anthem is a specific thing that's unique from our other IPs in many ways. What carries forward is what we learn about game design, which is a constant evolution. Now, further on, Michael Gamble of Bioware says this, I want to clarify this as the title simplifies it far too much. And you can see this VG247 article says, new Dragon Age Mass Effect titles will be heavily influenced by Anthem. He continues onward saying, Anthem has a main story, and that story concludes. But it also allows us to continue the storytelling soon after launch and keep the world alive and changing and fresh. New adventures, characters, and fun, end quote. So one thing that I took away from the PAX West panel is that they're very excited for Anthem's DLC because they're doing something brand new with the storytelling within a multiplayer world, and it sounds like to me that a lot of what they learned from the multiple options and different things could translate in terms of story, how they're evolving storytelling back into Mass Effect and Dragon Age. It's not necessarily talking about multiplayer development or anything like that. They're just talking about Anthem as a whole in terms of gameplay and stuff. Because, from what I played at E3, The gameplay was extremely impressive. It felt even better than Mass Effect Andromeda, which, you know, there's complaints about Mass Effect Andromeda, but one thing that they got right was the actual gunplay, at least in my opinion. It felt like it felt really good, and of course, as they keep continuing onward with their games, they're going to get better and better, and all those mechanics would carry over into their future games. I think that's basically what we could take away from that. They're not saying that every game going forward is going to be 100% multiplayer. That's not what was being said there. Okay, so let's talk about the animal life in Anthem. You know, we've seen some really cool shots, especially in this brand new gameplay trailer. They did show a shot of like these, I don't know what you call them, pterodactyl type creatures that breathe fire. So there's those that you would have to contend against. So there's a lot of variety here in terms of animal life, and then there's also really big bosses too. So let's get into this. Now, Travis was wondering, will the more animal-like enemies have ranged capabilities, or could we just hover above their reach shooting them? That's a good question, because you don't want to be too OP in this game, you know? And BioWare's Mark Darrow responded saying most have some sort of ranged attack, end quote. So that makes a lot of sense. You know, it would be very concerning if you just fly above every single creature that's supposed to be a threat, and you end up basically annihilating them without any type of real confrontation. Okay, let's talk about flying mechanics and overheating. There's some really good questions around this, some new questions. Zach says this: let's say you go really high into the air, then cut off the thrusters. Will the jetpack recharge during the fall, or do you have to be on the ground for that? Great question. And Mark Darrow says if you overheat fully, you have to be on the ground. If you don't, it is possible to get some cooldown. End quote. So there's an answer on that one. And from my experience, I don't think there's much in the way of fall damage in this game, as I recall. So you really don't have to worry about that too much. But yeah, you can see some of the melee moves you can do from the air. It's freaking sweet. So next up, we're going to be visiting Fort Tarsis. I'm talking a little bit about that. You guys know that forts were a big thing in Dragon Age Inquisition. You can upgrade them, build up the Skyhold and stuff like that. Can you do the same thing in Anthem? Which, by the way, would be freaking awesome. So that is the next big question from Loot Hunter. He asks, can Fort Tarsis be upgraded visually like Skyhold was in Dragon Age Inquisition? Excellent question again. And the response from Mark Darrow is, Fort Tarsis will change visually based upon missions you do. We won't have decorations like Skyhold, at least not at launch, end quote. So it sounds like to me the team has really considered the possibilities of upgrading this fort, and I personally think it would be badass to have some post-launch content around base building and stuff like that. Being able to go out and secure bases, build up stuff, and actually, you know, have some sort of base evolution, if you would. But it is cool to know that they did mention that story missions would change up the scenery in Fort Tarsis, which makes me wonder if Fort Tarsis could also become under attack, if you could see a version of Fort Tarsis that's kind of in disarray. Now that would be actually really, really neat to see. Like, you know, more defense, more panic in the city, stuff like that. So hopefully that actually happens. I would definitely be for that. Now, also, they did say that they are interested in doing seasonal stuff with Anthem in terms of the gear and stuff like that. And it would also be neat to see, you know, the holidays really reflected in the fort as well if you're roaming around and stuff like that. So that would be cool. And I imagine that maybe you would see new characters arrive at the fort, and maybe that's another thing you would see changed. You did see that happening a lot in the Mass Effect games. So when a new character was introduced, you would see, you know, parts of your ship change up because someone has moved in, and I always thought that was pretty cool. So maybe that's something they could do in Anthem as well. Now let's talk about passive skills. We do know that our freelancers, which is going to be the pilot, will be getting a skill tree, and then you'll be getting 4 different javelins. Each one of them will get their own weapons and then armor sets. But what about the javelins? Can they get their own passive skills separated from your pilot? That is going to be the question from Dave. Are there passive skills for freelancers? Javelins or both? And Mark Darrow responded saying, gear plus pilot skills, end quote. So, oh, I'm sorry, Michael Gamble responded saying gear plus pilot skills. Okay, so there's the correction on that one. So yeah, it's really cool to see that passive abilities would be reflected also on the gear that you get, meaning that you could possibly kind of stack certain passive abilities between your skill tree with the freelancer, your pilot, and then whatever gear you want. If you're wondering what in the world I'm referring to as passive skills, I'm talking about, you know, things that are outside of your active abilities, which you activate on the battlefield. Passive skills being stuff, you know, increased accuracy, bonuses to loot drops, and other things. So that would be reflected again in your pilot skill tree, and then your gear. So there you guys have it, the latest happenings around BioWare's Anthem. I'm personally still hyped for this one. I'm really excited to see what it's all about. And I'm curious to see how this fort is going to work out. So this is going to be like your single player area apparently. And I'm interested to see how Consequence is going to work with your choices, because that's a really big theme in this game apparently. They're really going to be trying to push that big time, and we'll see how it all works out. Again, it's going to be something that ties into DLC or something like that, and they're super excited about that as well. But guys, thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned here to Open World Games for more Anthem and open world gaming goodness, and I will see you next time.